Yo, what is up, Bitcoiners? Welcome to the Build a Mind podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Bello, and today I have a very exciting, very cool guest for you today. We're going to be talking with David Branscum. David is doing a lot of things in the Bitcoin mining space. Let me pull this off the screen real quick. So David is a seasoned expert in energy efficient data center solutions. He's currently working as an independent consultant, contractor, and investor. Formerly, he was the chief commercial officer at Amalgamated Energy Assets. He led data center site acquisitions and power management partnerships, while also serving in the same role at Rebel Mining Company, enhancing operations and client satisfaction. As a Bitcoin mining consultant, David specializes in immersion cooling, designing over 40 megawatts of mining sites and pioneering sustainable projects like methane extraction from Bourbon waste, which is something that I'm actually really excited to talk to him about because heat reuse is just something that I love. 256 heat is something that I'm just really excited about. His work also includes heat recapture with Prosperity Digital and methane mitigation with Vea Energy. A published author, he advances sustainable mining practices through research, notably in Bitcoin and its energy, environmental, and social impacts. Starting at Midas Energy Cooling, he drove growth and partnerships. David has deployed 240 megawatts of immersion cooling, 10 megawatts of heat recapture, 16 megawatts of off-grid gas mining, and 12 exahash of Bitcoin mining altogether. Managing $32 million in capital, he now focuses on attracting investment to strengthen the Bitcoin mining network and is developing a Bitcoin-backed financial tax product. Now, that's a lot. I know David is doing a lot of really cool things in the space, and while we could dive down so many different rabbit holes talking to him about what he does with his different investments, I'm going to push a lot of that to the side. David's a great guy, but I want to focus on the heat recapture, the heat reuse side of things, because that's my pride and joy. It's my bread and butter. It's what I love to talk about. We just got back from the Undermine Heat Punk Summit, which was an incredible event. So much signal coming out of this event. This is actually the first podcast that I've done since coming back from Denver. And, I think David would agree, and maybe we'll get his opinions on it when we bring him up. This event, and I've been to several conferences over the last year, probably a dozen, maybe more. This event was the highest quality event that I've ever been to. And, being someone who's come in a little bit later in the space, I came in about 22. I went to my first conference in 24. It really feels like the energy is being diluted. Like there's a lot of shit coins built on Bitcoin or shitcoin infrastructure that's happening, and it's not something that I like to see as a hardcore maxi. I want to see the Bitcoin only projects, and to get a group of very enthusiastic, very passionate people in one room, a small amount of people too. It was like 120 people in this room talking about heat recapture and Bitcoin mining. Chef's kiss. Tyler, Cody, and the rest of the guys over there helping to put on this event. You guys did an amazing job. I appreciate the opportunity for Build a Mind to be there, to be part of this event. And really, I can't wait till next year. I am so excited. So it was a lot of fun. It was a really great event. And I hope that some of you had the opportunity to make it there. And if you didn't, there will be an opportunity next year. So real quick, before we dive into the podcast and we bring David up, there are a couple things I want to tell you about. First and foremost, as always, I want to tell you about the Mastermind Club.
Join the Mastermind Club, a weekly gathering of Bitcoin miners sharing insights to help you optimize or build your mining business. Our community fosters open discussion and collaboration, connecting you with experts who can help you overcome challenges and find solutions faster. Every other week, we host the Mastermind Deep Dive, where industry leaders delve into the financial, operational, and optimization hurdles faced by miners like you. Brought to you by Bitcoin Mining World.
All right, like I said, as always, go to the bottom of the screen, the QR code there. join the mastermind group. It's a free join. It's a free group to join. Every week we do deep dives. We bring people on who are experts in their field in the Bitcoin mining industry, and we show you how to build a profitable Bitcoin mining venture. It's a great opportunity for anybody who's just looking to learn, brainstorm, get ideas, gather information. Great place to go. So we're going to pull this off the screen. All right, let's pull that off the screen. Check it out. So the next thing I want to tell you guys about is Bitcoin Alaska. That is the next, well, not the next, but it's one of the conferences that I'm going to be at. Really looking forward to this event. And I wanted to tell you guys about it because you can still get your tickets. It's not until July. It's July 5th and 6th up in Juneau. So if you've never been to Alaska, this is a great opportunity to get out there, to see some of the wildlife, to see some of the really good, the really beautiful, rugged places that Alaska has to offer. And then also go to a Bitcoin event that is, in my opinion, based on what the organizers have told me, it's going to be high signal as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun. You know, Alaska has a lot of energy resources that aren't being utilized. They're being underutilized. And I think that Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin in general can really come in to help some of the underserved communities and really make Alaska the second, you know, Gold Rush 2.0, really make it a prime candidate for expansion and growth. So I'm really looking forward to that event. Go to the link at the bottom of your screen to purchase your tickets. Get out there, have some fun, meet some Bitcoiners. I'm going to be there. It's going to be a good time. So, and the last thing, I know so many things to talk about. The last thing I want to tell you guys about is our virtual conference that we're putting on for March 11th. It's an all-day Bitcoin mining conference. I've got a quick video to share with you guys.
Want to master Bitcoin mining at an industrial scale? Join top experts as they break down the latest strategies and technologies shaping the mining industry. We'll cover energy efficiency, scaling operations, and maximizing profitability in Bitcoin mining. Don't miss out. RSVP now to the Bitcoin Mining World Virtual Conference, taking place on March 11th.
There it is. Okay, so one more time, March 11th. It's in a little less than 2 weeks. A lot of really great speakers. David is actually going to be one of the speakers as well. So maybe we'll talk to him, get a little sneak peek at what he's going to be talking about. But it's going to be a great opportunity for you to learn everything from business strategy, tax incentives, insurance planning, to the actual hardware and infrastructure of building a Bitcoin mining operation. And as we know, it's not easy. So all the information that you can gather, that you can get before you dive in or before you start to expand is very helpful. And it's only $21. So go to the link at the bottom of the screen and join us next. I think it's 2 weeks from now, a little less than 2 weeks from now. It's going to be a good opportunity. All right. Enough of that. Let me get rid of this banner. Enough talking about that stuff. Let's get into Bitcoin mining. David, welcome to the Build a Mine podcast. You are muted, sir.
Well, I sound a lot better that way, but I guess I'll unmute. Okay.
Rookie mistake, man. Rookie mistake.
I don't do this very often, honestly.
I don't believe you.
Yeah, but it's it's good to be here. It was nice seeing you in Denver. I guess I saw you in Minnesota, a few months ago as well.
Minnesota, Denver. I saw you down in Houston.
Yeah. So it's been good kind of watching you. Congrats on the podcast. It's looking great. The intro was fantastic, by the way. I think that's the first time I saw the intro all the way through. So solid.
Awesome. I appreciate that, man. It's been a work in progress. We're all just building in our own little echo chambers, and it's good to expand the echo chamber. I want to, I want to hear your feedback of the event. I'm trying to create some more FOMO for next year's Denver Heat Punk Summit. What were your thoughts on the event?
Sure. So let me kind of go back a little bit. About a year ago, I think Empower has kind of shut down. Some of these things are kind of consolidating, right? And I was at, there was also a good event in Nashville, right, at Bitcoin Park. And this was a year ago. And I was working with my business partner. We were traveling, and I met this, tall, redhead kid with, a sick mustache, young guy. And I was like, what do you do? And he's like, well, I actually I'm an engineer, mechanical engineer. work for an aerospace company. We test out the thermal dynamics of different materials. And I'm like, oh my, I was like, that's probably one of the smartest things I've ever heard anybody tell me that they actually do for a living. Right. So and it was Tyler. And I immediately said, hey, I'm not an engineer by trade. I'm technical, but I'm not an engineer. So can you, I've got a project I need to work on. Can you, help me out with this? And so he helped me out for about, I don't know, 2 or 4 weeks or whatever. I am by no means taking credit for this guy in the space. He quit his job and just went to Nashville and was like, let's go. I want to be in mining. I want to do this. Right. And so I felt really good that I was able to, just kind of, give him something right off the bat, get him rolling. But man, what he has been able to accomplish, I mean, he's basically built, like a Bitcoin park or a Bitcoin Commons here in Austin, in Denver. And it was really, a really good timing in an appropriate place. I mean, there's quite a few Bitcoiners are there, right? So it's been amazing, though, to see how quickly he took that meetup. And I know it's a lot of other people, right? I'm not trying to, just give him all the credit on that, but it's amazing how quickly he got this event put on, how they acquired the space. And like you said, just the quality of people that were there. I mean, I've been to a few conferences, small conferences that I would say from like a name recognition, like Saylor and Mahlers were there and stuff like that, right? That was impressive, right? But from a actual like mining standpoint, probably some of the best innovators in the space were there, right? It was all signal, no noise. I mean, it was hard to have a conversation at that place, even with friends that you've known for a while. It was hard to have a conversation that didn't eventually get back to, mining optimization, operations, supply chain, technology, chip development, heat recapture. It's like it was actually a little bit of an overload, right? But that's in a good way. I came back, honestly, like beginning of the year, right? I kind of pushed really, really hard with a lot of work stuff towards the end of the year. And so it's kind of been not taking it easy, right? But just kind of slow playing some things. But man, I'm super energized. I came back recharged, ready to get going, and just kind of hit the ground running, right? Just kind of seeing what everybody else is working on. And I mean, if you're not pushing yourself in this industry, you're falling behind. The technology's moving fast. These guys are pushing it. And I mean, honestly, what's amazing about it is all this innovation is also being self-funded, right? They're all self-mining, or they're working for a small company or trying to get a company off their bootstrapping it. And it's just so much fun to be here. I know it will not always be like this. It's going to get bigger. It's going to get a little more corporate down the road. But man, what Tyler and the group there has been. I mean, Eric Gakes is over there, right? It's like they've got some amazing experience there. Rob over there, right? Bikes and Bitcoin, right? It's like those guys know what they're doing. They're dedicated. They're committed, and it's contagious. And I just wish them all the best. And I know it's going to continue to grow.
Yeah, I really, watching Tyler's journey. I mean, I met Tyler probably about 6-7 months ago, and watching him go from, where he was at to, being concerned, like he wasn't sure what he was going to do in the space, to full on just building a Bitcoin citadel in Denver and having all these events, like you said, being self-funded, being a 501c3, and doing all this work to empower other individuals in the Bitcoin space is just, it's incredible. And I think it's just a testament to what can be achieved when you set your mind to something. And Tyler and the rest of those guys over there, they, like Rob and Eric, they are very dedicated to Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. And I think that, based on all the other events that I've been to, that is the thing that really gets me, is that like you start letting in sponsors and you start trying to grow and you make these events really big, and all of a sudden you start having to obfuscate some of that power to these shit coins and to, projects built on Bitcoin, but they're not Bitcoin, they're Bitcoin adjacent. And that really dilutes the messaging that we have here. Whereas this event, like, there was none of that. It was, if you were talking anything other than Bitcoin, get the fuck out of here.
Somebody corrected you. If you
Exactly.
if you even leaned into something else, yeah, they would correct you.
I
for
loved
sure.
it. I loved it, man.
So,
I told my wife, I was like, I was sad that I had to leave, you know, and she's like, you didn't want to come home to me. I'm like, it's not that, babe. It's
no,
not
it's
that.
not that. It's
It's
not
not
that at
that.
all.
It's just
No.
that, you know, I
I
didn't
was
want to.
happy to come home and get back to work and stuff like that. But yeah, it's you get, it's just so encouraging. Someone was asking me, someone who's out, not in Bitcoin or mining at all, a friend, and they're like, well, what are these small conferences like? Because it seems like you're always going off to some weird, spot for a conference. And I said, well, it's weird. It's like we're not actually legally, working together in a corporation, but it's almost like a corporate retreat, team building exercise. It's like we all go hang out for a few days, find out what everybody else in the company's been doing, encourage each other, help solve problems, maybe even challenge each other a little bit, right? Push each other. And then we go back and we do the same thing. And there's still communication, right? But that face to face, like, for 48 or 72 hours straight. And sometimes it is like, sometimes you stay up all night talking about Bitcoin mining at these places. It's great because you get this rare opportunity for communication, one-on-one. So it's interesting. And I will say also, I mean, between like, Rob and Tyler, it's like we need more kind of engineering minds like this in the space. That a lot of engineers get super hyper focused, and to the point where it's like they can easily figure out how to do something. They don't always stop and think, should we do this? Right. Like, what does it make sense to do this? In what case does it actually make sense? Right. There's this kind of interesting, these other, intangibles that come into play. And Tyler's real good about that. Rob's real good about that, looking at the realities of things, where we are, still continuing to forge ahead, but taking the time to understand, this is actually what we, yes, we should absolutely push and move forward with this.
Absolutely. And it's important. It's very important if we're going to get some of the things we're going to be talking about today. If we're going to get some of these things that we need to grow as an industry and to expand the hash rate at home, in homes and businesses, like these are the places where it happens. So I want to let's dive into you. Let's if you could just give us a quick elevator pitch. Who is David Branscum? What are some of the things that you've done, and how did you get into Bitcoin?
Sure. Yeah. I got into it at the end of really, I guess, 2021. Like a lot of people, I was at home. I had some free time in my hands, but I didn't know about ASICs. And so I was buying, GPUs and mining them on, don't shoot me yet, but I was mining them on, the Ethereum Dagger Hashimoto, right? So, but I was mining to nice hash and immediately getting paid in Bitcoin, right? I never really had like a shitcoin phase. I guess I was lucky that way. But I was over the last 10 years, it's like I've been raising a family, raising two boys. And it's like every year, the amount of money it took me to pay my bills got more and more, even though I wasn't buying anything new. And I was like, something's just wrong, right? So I finally started kind of studying inflation. I started listening to, the What is Money podcast and listening to Saylor and stuff like that. And got into mining at home and realized it's like I was spending the electricity to mine, but I was making enough money in Bitcoin if I wanted to cash out and pay my entire electric bill, right? Like it was profitable. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting, right? So I kind of started digging into it a little bit. But, 2020, weird time. So fast forward to like not really working much at all. And then kind of mid 21, I was just bored. And so I decided I have a koi pond in the back. It's one of my favorite things. And I wanted to build a raised grow bed. So I'm building like the pipes and the plumbing, and I'm doing the stuff and the pumps and all that. And my neighbor across the street comes over. Turns out he was at the time, he was the CEO of Midas Immersion, and they had just sold like a couple hundred megawatts to Riot. And so I came in right after they kind of closed that deal, got to see how you deploy that kind of stuff, helped them, sell a few more megawatts of Immersion. Kind of wanted to go one direction. They wanted to go another. So I ended up leaving. And then some two really nice guys gave me my first shot on my own. I met them at Mining Disrupt in Miami. I built a 16 megawatt facility. It was 8 air, 8 immersion. I worked with a really good immersion fabricator, on that 8 side, and to kind of, just tweak it and make sure it ran properly. Got to work on a off-grid gas site mine for a guy that's, that was kind of my first introduction. So very educational again. And then got to do a heat recapture project in Norway, which is pretty cool. We can kind of dig into that a little bit later, but, I've got to heat a barn and a cow barn and a grow house with immersion cooling. I guess I think I have OCD, ADD, like everything has to be perfect, but only for a short period of time. And then, I have to do something else. So it's like 6 months to 9 months to a year. And it's kind of like I'm, looking for a new kind of interesting project to work on, some people to work with and stuff like that. And like I said, a year ago, I was working with a partner. We're still developing like off-grid gas sites, turning them into power, some of them into mining facilities, some of them just, power for distribution, things like that. I've kind of slowly moved upstream on the power side, and met Tyler, and we were talking about, heat recapture and, stuff I've already done, thinking to myself, man, if I had this guy, working with me, I could have done this so much easier. I had to learn all the math and all the physics and stuff, along the way. So it's been fun. I've just been able to touch and be a part of so many different projects, and I'm just trying to be a sponge and just pick up as much as I can. I've worked on projects where I didn't make any money, right? It was rough, but it was just like, I just want the education. I need to learn how this stuff works, right? And then the nice thing is, every now and then one of those projects pays off and you make enough, a little bit more, but it's still, we're all just trying to work hard and figure this out. We're all trying to find our place in this, new industry, because it is so self-funded and stuff like that. It's like, there's not just ridiculous amount. You hear about big deals, but there's not like ridiculous amounts of capital in this industry, relatively speaking. So we're all challenged. We're all hard pressed to do more with less. We're all trying to be innovative and stuff like that. And I just try to remember that. And I feel lucky to have been able to do anything. And then when you sit back and you look at it, you're like, man, last 3.5, almost 4 years has been very exciting. And so that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Yeah. It's really interesting to me what happens when you get the type of person who is always, wanting to learn, wants to just absorb information. Mm-hmm. And then also, connect that with the fact that you're looking at the world and how it's going, and you're seeing these problems and going like I'm not spending any more money. I'm not changing my lifestyle, but like things are going backwards for me. What the heck? Yeah. And so like Bitcoin, comes in. We've hashed that out on this podcast millions of times. It's great. But then mining, like this aspect of mining comes in, and it's like, you're the type of person that wants to learn. You want to like explore new things. I'm the same way, man. Like I want to spend like 9 months to 12 months, a year and a half or whatever on this project. And then once I've got that project dialed in, I kind of focus on something else. Yeah. And so it's really cool that you kind of framed it that way, is because I love mining, man. Like I love heat recapture. I think this is something that the world needs, but also like once they figure it out, it's gonna just expand the mining universe so much.
I've heard a lot of people say this about a lot of different things, right? But sometimes it's hard to be early. Yeah. Right. And that's true in Bitcoin, any kind of technology that it has value and things like that. If you think about, like, I was kind of in a rut, right? I wasn't doing much of anything. I was bored. We were just going day to day. And like, I just decided one day, I'd been watching YouTube videos and just randomly decided one day, I'm going to go to Home Depot. I'm going to spend like $1,100 I probably shouldn't spend on a bunch of wood, a tarp, drains, plumbing, all this stuff. And I'm just going to figure it out. I was going to FAFO, right? I don't know if I'm doing it right, but I'm going to try it. And honestly, that was probably the catalyst, right? It's like, I woke up one day And I realized, I was like, when's the last time I learned something new? When's the last time I did something interesting? I mean, I'm no spring chicken anymore, and I've been playing by the rules, and those rules didn't get me anywhere, So it's like, just go do something different. Just get out of your perspective and do something different. And I think that was honestly the catalyst I needed. So if there's someone, when I talk to people that are like, I met someone in Nashville. Interesting. Actually has the same last name as me. Never met a person like that in the wild, especially with my spelling. So it turns out like we're, distant cousins or whatever. But like he wants to get into mining. And I was like, man, I've got, 2 busted S19s in my garage. I don't need them for heat. Let me send those to you and just, do what you need to, right? It's like, and so just do something. Just learn, pick a direction and go, and you'll figure it out as you move along. It's kind of painful sometimes, but yeah, we need that. And I think that's what's so contagious about, like events like that and things like heat recapture, right?
Mhm.
These are things that, yeah, people have done heat recapture before, but there's never been a technology like a miner, like an ASIC miner that can to truly provide heat in a unique way. So we're monetizing it and able to capture that heat. There's never been a way to monetize power this quickly, this easily, this close to a power source. So you talk, and then you start to go down that rabbit hole. You start to get creative, and you're like, man, what are all the things I need heat for? Right? Like we create and generate heat, with our cars. We create and generate heat for hair dryers, for ovens, for clothes dryers, for dehydrators, for water heaters. It's like all of this stuff that we, have become accustomed to that we need. And you're like, man, you could wedge Bitcoin into all of that. And so it becomes, at that point, it's not a matter of, okay, where do I go look? Now it's a matter of how can I stay focused, right? Can I pick one spot to go? I got lucky a few years ago, and these guys reached out to me, and they were doing some heat recapture and stuff like that. And I ended up not working with them, but I found an investor in Norway that was like, at this small town. And he's like, hey, we've got boilers. We want to, heat our, our few public buildings. We've got, we're using wood chips. What can we do? And I was like, well, at that time it was still kind of weird in Europe. They don't like a lot of unnecessary, power usage. It's very expensive. Power's taxed. It's controlled. It's gated. So we had to go in there and say we weren't a Bitcoin mining facility. We had to say we were a heat provider. So what we were doing was taking hydroelectric power, turning it into heat, and then selling the heated water back to them. So it was like we got an exempt kind of status. We also didn't pay a lot of taxes, so we got decent price on power, and then we still marked it up, right? So if we were paying like, let's say, I throw around a bunch of numbers. These are not exact numbers, but let's say we were paying like 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour.
Mm-hmm.
We were marking it up to 3 cents per kilowatt hour after we generated the heat is what the equivalent was. But we were using immersion cooling, sending it through a heat exchanger, just like the tubs in Denver, right? The hot tubs that they set up in Denver. It's the same thing. And we were taking the water flow and raising it anywhere from 6 to maybe 8 degrees Celsius. And just that alone was enough for them to remove about almost 20% of the boiler capacity they needed, right?
Yeah.
So that was a lot less wood chips they were needing to burn. We were monetized. We were making money on the power, providing it, and they were getting a very useful service, right? So they loved that. And and it was interesting because I was like, wait a minute, now that I'm really looking at this, we're getting paid to mine Bitcoin, right? Like someone's like, well, do you ever have to shut off because it's unprofitable? I'm like, no, never. Like even our hash rate percentage of the network will go down and down, and our, the amount of Bitcoin we'll get will go down and down, but it will always produce Bitcoin, which is crazy. And I can use old stuff. I don't have to upgrade, I can, but this is also an interesting heat recapture angle as well, right? There's so much existing old, outdated, unprofitable systems out there. We could tie those in and give them a second life and at least get a rebate on your power. If you're using it for heat, it's it's limitless at that point, right? So that is, I believe that we have, you can, Bob Burnett was at the event and he has his, rabbits, horses, and whatever, and elephants, right? And there's not a lot of horses. There can be a lot of rabbits and there can be a few elephants. The horses are actually kind of usually the area that kind of gets squashed, right? That gets harder as things kind of centralize. So I feel that what I'd call, maybe mid-market, right? Or mid-cap kind of mining, if you will, which I don't know if it's the horse or maybe it's like decentralized horses kind of thing. So you get a company that's like making, a Bitcoin miner that's built into like, a Tesla Powerwall and solar panels, and they mass distribute that, or they do that with hot water heaters. Yeah, they may not have like one facility that's like a megawatt, but they may have thousands of customers that are all providing hash rate, right? I mean, they may have, a couple of exahash by the time everything's said and done, just because of the sheer numbers. So I think that's where it's going. I think that's where the biggest opportunity is right now.
I completely agree with you. We, as the horse side, well, not me, but you and others in the heat recapture space, we have a unique advantage over some of these large pubcos. I mean, you look at the revenue that these pubcos are generating, and it's being cut in half, it's being reduced. Like, they're not profitable, and the only way that they're surviving is, for some reason or another, people are like giving them money. I don't know why. I don't do enough research into it to really even care. But I do know that like getting paid for mining and also generating heat, like it's a win-win situation. And I've spoken with a few people who are doing similar things. It's easier for you as a 1 megawatt, 5 megawatt mining operation to modularize and move to different locations where you need to generate the heat. Obviously, in West Texas, you don't need to send heat to district heating. But in Norway, in Finland, in the Scandinavian regions, like, it makes sense. Up in Canada, it makes sense. In Alaska, it makes sense. And then there's other opportunities as well. I've spoken with people who are in agriculture or in ranching, and they need heat for that aspect as well. So it's so interesting, the different types of heat that we need, like the different ways that we need heat and what we can do with it, and how people are just finding really unique ways to create profits through Bitcoin mining. It's actually incredible if you really dig into it. It's something that I'm really excited about. Speaking of heat recapture, you got to tell me about this Bourbon methane mitigation. Like, I am really curious about what's happening here.
This is a cool tech. So I was connected about a year and a half ago with these guys. Jake Gammon is the guy's name. He's the founder of a company called Proof, and it's a play on proof of work. And then obviously, the amount of alcohol in bourbon, right? So good name. He is a partnership with a doctor that has just created an amazing technology. And what they've been able to do is take stillage, which is the waste from a bourbon distillery, right after the bourbon's made and barreled. And as bourbon has become more popular, since it's uniquely a American only thing. I mean, bourbon legally has to be made in Kentucky. There's little loopholes and things, but it has to spend like the first 366 days of its life in a barrel in Kentucky legally to be called bourbon. So it's kind of got this notoriety now as a uniquely American beverage. Well, it is grown in popularity so much that all these distilleries are popping up. I mean, during the pandemic, you couldn't keep bottles on the shelf. They were shipping them out, left and right. And it's just continued in popularity. Well, at one time they were dumping this stuff down in the sewer, and it was degrading in the sewer with no light or air. And it was generating methane gas. Well, I mean, that's dangerous, right? The wrong kind of spark, and that thing will light. So they had this big problem. So they put out a grant, and this guy was I think he was at University of Kentucky, and he created this new kind of design for biodigestion. And because you're using there's other companies out there that are doing it with, food waste and stuff like that. But he was the first one to use, he realized if you use only one type of waste, you can really control what goes in. You can also really figure out and extract, specific pieces of that very scientifically. So he's been able to take that. There's two things that are important. He's been able to put it in pretty wet, right? A lot of these things, they can't take a lot of water and stuff like that. He's been able to put his in fairly wet. There's a little bit of drying, but nowhere near what other designs need. He puts it in there. It moves through it very quickly. And the way that he's designed it, it's, the input and output is a lot shorter time period, really a week to 2 weeks, depending on, how mature the system is. But he's also been able to extract, he extracts the xylose, which is a type of sugar that's used in diabetic foods because your body doesn't really absorb it the same way it does natural sugar. So it's almost like a calorie-free sweetener. Mm-hmm. Delta Airlines is actually using it in their jet fuel because of how sweet it is. It actually burns almost as hot as jet fuel, right? So they've been using that as an additive. It's interesting. There's also obviously some carbon credit potential. You're taking waste and turning it into energy. And then if you burn the energy there, because it's methane gas, right? You're burning it, then it's cleaner, right? Than just releasing it and venting it into the air. There's, they also have, and then obviously you get the methane gas off of that, right? There's also a fiber that's left that is just nothing more than a little bit of fiber and a lot of protein. So they're using that for animal feed and feedstock and stuff like that. It's super healthy because it's just all the protein for beef or dairy cattle, right? And then obviously you have the gas you can turn into power, and they're using it to turn into power and mine Bitcoin, or you can just sell the gas onto the pipeline. You can turn it on and plumb it to a stove. I mean, biodigestion is something that's used all over the world because it is so readily available. You take your food scraps, put it in a big, plastic bag, like balloon type thing. And as it degrades, it creates this pressure and this gas, and people use it, for heat and to cook and stuff like that. So lots of interesting things and innovations happening. And this was done because of a problem, right? But Bitcoin mining, through their company has kind of helped funding it and getting it up and running. And it's really interesting. And you want to talk about, we talked about opportunities and what kind of scope this is. The numbers are staggering. If for some reason, it's pie in the sky kind of idea, right? But if we can get to where every single company in Kentucky that makes bourbon, that has a distillery, if they were using 100% of their waste in this way, they could create enough electricity to literally power every single business and home in the state of Kentucky. It's roughly 3 gigawatts of power. So 3,000 megawatts of power. That's the potential, right? Obviously, a lot of money, a lot of building, a lot of infrastructure required to do that. But if you can make this in a setup where I'm going to open up a new food plant or a factory, and I'm going to take all the waste and, scraps and stuff that I normally would just throw out, and I put them in a biodigester, figure that out, and I can power my factory, well, then, that change can happen, really quickly and things like that. So yeah, I love what they're doing. Anytime I can, I just try to, push new technologies out there, let people know what's happening. And I think they've got their first, maybe it's not a lot, right? Maybe like 200, 300 kilowatts up and running, but the proof of concept works. So now it's just a matter for them to get the money to expand it. And you could even use it kind of like, I tried the Bitcoin beer, at in Denver, right? And so you have like Marshall Long and Christian Brains, right? They've been pushing that stuff. It's a similar process, right? There you can use a little bit of the heat to generate, during the brewing process. You could use a little bit during the distillation process and capture some of that, and it becomes a self-sustaining thing. It's just so much more efficient.
It's this crazy virtuous cycle where it just feeds in on itself. And that's I had not heard of this. I mean, obviously, I'm in heat reuse, and you know that distilling whiskey and other types of alcohol, you need heat. So I thought of it from that aspect, but I didn't think about the waste aspect of, the stillage that comes from the whiskey making process.
Not all of them work like that, right? It's unique, but bourbon is just one of those things that happens to have, so they have in Tennessee whiskey, right? They have the mash. It's kind of the same thing, but they use that mash for the next one. In bourbon, the way you make it, you don't use that for the next, right? So you have to start fresh every time. Otherwise it basically is Tennessee whiskey. It's not bourbon anymore. Right. So, but it depends. But yeah, I mean, you just start thinking about all the food waste that goes on in the United States, and what could we do to generate power and energy, regardless of whether you're Bitcoin mining or not, right? Just let's not wait. Energy is plentiful if you can just figure out a way to harness it and use it. So.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is that like all this FUD going on around how we're using all of this energy to power Bitcoin miners, and we're going to use all the infrastructure that we have. It's like that's a big load of horse shit, because there's so much energy to go around. Energy is practically free if you know how to capture it. And that's the biggest thing. I mean, I've heard so many stories. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dan Kohler. He's doing they've got a tire mining facility where they're breaking down tires.
Is that PRTI?
I think so. Yeah.
So the company PRTI, that's Jason Williams going parabolic on Twitter. Mags Gronowska is also, Crypto Mags is also a part of that. Yeah, they basically created a reactor. So what they do is they heat that rubber to the point where it's reduced down to its original oil base, and then they burn that at an incredibly high temperature and use that for boilers to create.
We might be talking about two different people here on this aspect, because what they're doing with Dan, they're actually breaking the tire down, they're heating it up, and they're extracting the propane and diesel gases out of the tires, and they're not actually burning the rubber. So it might be two different ways, but even still, that it's incredible, because you're seeing all of these unique ways to create energy from waste products. And I think it's really going to be an interesting dichotomy that we see, or dynamic that we see moving into the future. What happens when we start reducing the waste and using that waste for, really innovative processes that create and generate electricity? Maybe it's not even being used for Bitcoin mining. Maybe that electricity infrastructure is going towards, paying for some of this electricity that people are already paying for, and it's reducing people's cost of living. That's something that I'm really excited about. So, just all the different ways that Bitcoin and mining are making people's lives easier.
Yeah. It's we're driven to find the cheapest and most available energy possible. Right. Yeah. And we're willing to work for it because of how easy and efficient it is to turn that into to money, essentially. So we are buyers of last resort. What that means is we're willing to go wherever and take the dirtiest stuff that no one else wants to touch. Right. Like whether it's setting up in the middle of West Texas, right, because there's nobody out there. Nobody wants to live out there, but there's tons of power. Or it's, going into a dump, right? Like a landfill. And as that stuff decomposes over time and vents that methane, if there's a way for us to capture that and monetize it, right, and turn it into money, we'll do it, right? So it really is, it's interesting too. This is a technology and innovations that has not at all been subsidized so far by the U.S. government, right? At least in the U.S., really any government, not many governments that I know of, maybe El Salvador, right, because of the geothermal that they do, the volcano energy and stuff like that. But outside of that, we haven't seen much yet, which is kind of amazing that we have this much potential. But, it's all been self-done by the innovators who just want to kind of drive it. So.
Well, it shows the passion and, again, the drive that these people have. I mean, we are a certain type of people that see the future. We can see where this is heading, and it's just taking these really, really smart people, these individuals, building these projects. I mean, I could never build something like that. Maybe I could be part of a project like that, but some of these things that I'm hearing about being a podcaster in the space and having these conversations, it's like blowing my mind. And I'm like, holy crap, like where we're heading is just an incredible place. So I want to spend, the next, 10, 15 minutes, and I want to talk about what you're doing with Lucid. You kind of explained to me a little earlier before we started recording this new microchip architecture. And this is something that I'm really excited about, because I've spoken with Tyler in the past. I've had a lot of conversations on the podcast where we talk about like what happens when we can get mining chips up to a certain threshold, and we're not there yet. But then you see, some of the new hydro miners that are coming out, and they're being able to heat water to like excess of 180 degrees, which is really cool. But yeah, just tell us, what is Lucid? What is this new microchip infrastructure that you're working on? Tell us what we can kind of see and like a timeline for it.
Sure. And I'm not going to get too technical
For
because
sure.
I don't know much about the chip on the technical
Yeah.
side. I'll leave that to some people much smarter than me. But this chip is a new architecture. So the wafers are actually built differently than anything that's existing on the market. It is a larger size chip. So we're not going from like 3 nanometer to 2 nanometer just for, fractions of a percentage as far as like improvement in efficiency and things like that. So I don't know all the details. I can't explain gates and how they work and all that stuff, but I know that the initial one will probably be closer to like 8 nanometer. It's a larger chip, which means it can, in most cases, what that means when the larger chip is, it takes more power to do the same amount of compute. Because the power and the information is having to move from one place to another further. In this type of architecture, that is not the case. So we feel like it's going to be drastically more efficient than even the latest and greatest, 12, 13 joules per terahash on the out in the market right now. Feel like the first one is going to get a pretty dramatic, maybe 25 or even 30% efficiency boost. We'll see. But also something really interesting about it is it's a dual use chip. It's not an ASIC. So it's not, designed to only do hash 256, not nonstop, right? It can do any type of compute. A lot of the, like if you know anything about just even like a personal computer, this is probably the easiest way to describe it. There you have all these different components that all do different things, and they're all connected, but because they're separate and connected, they technically lose a lot of efficiency when they move information from one place to the other. They give each other signals and say, yes, do this, go here, do that. Imagine a chip that basically has the processor, the RAM, and the ROM all on the same chip, right? So it's storage, it's processor, it's random access memory, it's all of this in one place. It's also built around kind of an AI sort of architecture as well. So like it learns over time. It's called self-healing. It learns over time to optimize the compute. If it does one thing one time, even if you don't come back for a long time, it optimizes that process and gets more efficient the next time it does it. So in Texas, we have miners on the grid, and then when the grid is under heavy strain, the miners will turn off, so we can divert the power to businesses and homes and people that need it, whether it's times of extreme heat or it's times of extreme cold. We max out the grid, and this is by nature. You build a grid to be maxed out when you need it, right? But then 75% of the time you don't need it maxed out, right? So there's all this excess energy. So what we're doing as miners is we're able to buy that energy and then turn off, right? So it creates a more efficient grid, more revenue for the power providers, all this kind of stuff, right? So I call it a load balancing, right? That was kind of a tangent, but it's all to say this chip that we're working on could also load balance, but instead of balancing power, it could balance compute. So it can run whatever you need to, sort of AI, algorithm, real time, whatever modeling you need to do. And then if there is a dip in the compute need and it breaks, instead of turning the machine off and not drawing power and having to figure out how to balance that load power, it could automatically switch to SHA-256 and it could hash for Bitcoin in the meantime, right? It could even allocate, portions of its compute on the boards from, so 75% is doing this, the other 25% is, mining Bitcoin, right? So if you can do that, you're talking about an incredibly efficient way for data centers to maximize their profit, right? So like if AI is worth more, then we run that compute, we sell that compute on the marketplace and we get that. If Bitcoin mining is worth more than what the marketplace is giving us right now. We just mine Bitcoin, right? It's a true balance. And I think it's kind of a game changer from that aspect. And not to mention the fact that even if we do a scaled down chip that all it does is, mine SHA-256, we're still going to be more efficient than anything else out there on the market. And this is a way different direction than, all the other companies are trying to get to, right? They're just trying to get smaller and smaller and smaller. It's time to take it a new direction. And also, like you asked in the beginning, if we're operating, larger chips and they can take more power, I mean, we could operate that at 100, 110 degrees Celsius potentially, which is well over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So you're not even getting close to boiling. You're actually, you're getting pretty much at boiling. So whether you're using at the chip technology and kind of steaming the water essentially, or you can use immersion cooling and you can use a dielectric to exchange it, whatever the case may be. I mean, that opens up a lot more opportunity for industrial applications, for boilers, things like that. And so that's where you get like a lot of these smaller, or what I call mid-cap businesses, smaller manufacturing businesses in the U.S. that can use this to generate real heat. They can use it for, sealing plastics. They can do it for melting. There's lots of other stuff we can do. So that is, it's a lot. When I'm explaining that chip, it sounds too good to be true. And you'll talk to guys about it. I talked to a couple guys in Denver that are like, man, it sounds like you're trying to kind of, bend the laws of physics a little bit, and they're not wrong, right? It is pushing things to the bounds, but if it can do what we say it can do, then it'll be a game changer on a number of different levels. And the thing about it is this chip is currently being used. It's actually produced, just not on a commercial level. It's being used in a couple of defense projects. So it has been used in small projects, right? It's made to withstand the hot and cold extremes of space. It handles the radiation in that extreme environment, the radiation changes in that extreme environment. So it is working. It is real. We just have to get it into commercial production to be able to actually, plop a little miner on a desk and say, hey, here you go. It's operating, and you can see the joules per terahash and its efficiency and all that stuff. So we're probably about a year, maybe a year and a half away from being able to do that. But that's pretty much on par with a lot of the other companies that are trying to build in the U.S. anyway, with all the geopolitical things going on as well. So we're excited about that. And I'm going to be really interested to tackle the cooling of it and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously, if we can tie in a heat recapture, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know how to cool ASICs, so it's right up your alley to figure that out. It's interesting to me hearing about this, and I know a lot of people say it's pie in the sky and it's never going to happen, or you're bending the laws of physics. It just takes that proof of concept, and it sounds like you already have the concept built out. So it's like it works. It's just a matter of, like you said, getting it to commercial scale and putting it into a Bitcoin mining application. One of the questions that comes to my mind is, we have chips that get decently hot. I mean, they get really hot as it is right now. The biggest issue that I've heard is not the chip itself, but the PCB and the traces on the PCB board.
Yep.
Are you able to kind of explain how you might be getting around this problem?
I can't. The team I work with can, right? Because it's a different type of architecture. Yes, the PCB is going to be a little different. Not the material and everything, right? But just the design. It is very different. So, for example, but the good news here is when you're looking at those existing chips and the way that they're configured, the way they connect to control boards, because it is not as efficient a chip as this design, right? You're losing power, you're generating excess heat where you don't need it, all that kind of stuff, right? So with these, because they are so much more efficient, the communication is like, let's put it this way. Like right now, if you think, if you've ever worked on an ASIC, or you've ever, pulled out a board and cleaned it, or even, pulled a heat sink and pulled a chip, there's a lot of good guys in the space that do that. You're looking at, you have all these different pieces that have to fit together. You have the PSU, the control board, all of that, right? All we need is really something to regulate the voltage. And then I really don't need a control board either, right? Like because of this design. So because there's less components, there's less distance, physical distance, right, that it has to travel. Now you're still limited to the point of, the conductivity of the materials that you're using, et cetera, right? But you're eliminating a lot of that travel. You're eliminating a lot. So it allows that energy to flow a little bit better. That is my really terrible layman's terms way of explaining it. But what we're doing is the goal is to strip down, excuse me, existing technology to the absolute bare minimum that is required to get the compute. That's really all you're doing. And in an odd way, they think that they've been able to figure it out by, not going smaller and what they thought was more efficient, but actually going bigger and just changing the architecture a little bit, right? Allowing the energy and the compute to flow differently. So, love to, if anybody's interested, right, they can reach out, and I'm happy to connect them with, people much smarter than me to talk about this technology. The guy that is actually patented and invented this technology. But I just know that from a macro kind of perspective, that's kind of where I came in on it, right? If we can get this done, the applications are far reaching, well beyond just Bitcoin and mining, but just AI, autonomous vehicles, everything, right? It's if we can do the same amount of compute with only half the power, right, then that changes everything for all the technologies we use every day.
It's going to, if it comes to fruition, it's going to obsolete everything that we have right now.
I had somebody say, who's a lot smarter than me, honestly, right? In Denver, right? And they're like, well, what you're saying, it sounds like a NVIDIA, Intel, and, FPGA is like a killer, right? For all existing technologies. Like, I don't know, maybe, right? I'm not the one who knows that, but it's interesting. And again, even if it's something we can't do, right, I'm going to push and push and push and try to do it, right? Because I want to be there when it happens.
Why not?
Thing. Yeah.
Why not? If you try and fail, then you just try again on a different project. But if you try and succeed, it changes everything that we know about computing and everything that we know about Bitcoin mining. I think it's incredible. And, I want to go back to this dual compute thing. Does this mean that you could have, let's just say we could have a laptop that mines Bitcoin again at a much higher rate and also functions as a laptop?
Well, yeah. So it's essentially this, if it's the full functioning chip, it's essentially an AI server at that point, right? Okay. It's not even like a graphics card. It's an AI server. So it can do whatever it's programmed to do, right? Bob Burnett is working on kind of a similar technology, right? He's got, I've talked to him about that, right? He's like, yeah, you walk into, a data facility and it's literally just a bunch of air cooled, servers in racks. You don't even know what the compute is, right? Whereas right now, if you know what you're looking for, you walk in and you see a Bitcoin ASIC miner, big old toaster sitting on the shelf. It's you know what it's being done, right? So even from a security standpoint or sovereign standpoint, people coming in and shutting you down, stuff like that. It's I think it's very important to kind of look for these new form factors, these new innovations, these new designs, and obviously the same way we're talking about, let's put Bitcoin in a water heater, right? Well, let's put it in between, a server when we're running data to help, your Tesla run down the road without, running into other things, right? It's like anywhere you can shove it in, why would you not try to do that? So
absolutely. So last question, man. And I gotta ask, I think I know the answer, but is this going to be open sourced?
I think ultimately it would have to be, but at this point, what we would do is we'd be selling chips, right? Yeah. So we're not gonna completely throttle. You need to be careful about it, right? If it's our top of the line chip, these are used in defense projects. You need to, like in DARPA projects, it is a matter of national security for those top line chips, right?
Mm-hmm.
So probably can't export them. You know, certain facilities can use them, things like that. But we're talking about doing a scaled down version of that, right? And if we do that, then we have to partner, right? We have to partner with somebody who can find the applications and can run these, right? So ideally, what we would probably want to do is just work with them on developing their products, and then obviously sell them the chips themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as long as we have the IP on the chips, and we're the only ones really creating the chips, then yeah, it would kind of, the rest of it, the development and everything like that, would kind of be maybe not full open source, right, for all of it. But I see, we've already talked about making a chip that could is not a matter of national security. We could kind of move it, we can move it to other countries and things like that, and so it's I hate to say it, I mean, but I would love to be able to say yes 100%, but like any technology with this, if it really is what you say it is, what they say it is, then we've got to take a lot of responsibility for that, and we have to be careful about it.
Yeah.
And I know there's probably people out there that would hear this and be like, "Oh, okay, you're a shill, right? Open source everything. Let's go." And I was like, I'm for that, right? I'm for sovereignty. I'm for Nostr. I'm on Nostr. I have been for a while now, right? I'm a Bitcoiner. I'm a maxi. So it's like, yes, but at the same time, I always want to, make the best decision, not just for me, but for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to release anything into the world that's going to be dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to have to ask myself that question. I never thought I'd be at that point in my career, but it's so we'll do the best we can. I want innovation, right? I don't want to just make a whole bunch of miners and try to corner the hash rate market, right? We can't do that. It's the nice thing about Bitcoin is we really only win if we all win.
Absolutely.
And that's an interesting characteristic. I mean, whoever Satoshi was, realized that, and it was like, well, if I just make some Chuck E. Cheese tokens that I can only send between my friends in my city, no one's really going to care. They're not really. So you have to release it, you have to let it out, and you have to see what the market wants. And so this whole number go up, it really only works if everybody gets to take advantage of Bitcoin. And so I feel the same way about the other technologies, right? Like if someone wants to, do a heat recapture project or whatever, we can't patent that, we can't patent, I'm going to take this energy and turn it into this energy. Those are physics, right? You can't do all that stuff. You just have to create what you're creating, do it to the best of your ability, and do it better than anyone else until someone else better comes along. And then you just start working on their, on their standard as well. So I am all about this community. It's what was so amazing is in Denver is being able to talk about what you're struggling with, and Bitcoiners who have no skin in the game on your specific project or problem will sit down and spend 3 hours talking to you about the mistakes they've made and hope that it helps you figure out your problem. Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of what's so special about it. And what I hope, the community continues to foster.
Yeah. One idea or thought that just comes to mind during what you said is, with great power comes great responsibility. And
we all love Uncle Ben and Spider-Man. We all love
Exactly.
Spider-Man.
I'm all for open source. I believe open sourcing software, open sourcing hardware ideas really helps us grow and flourish as a community, as a network. But it goes back to like what you said, is that, if there is a national security concern, like when you open source something, everybody has access to it. That means China can go out and build it, Russia can go build it, and we have real world problems, real adversaries that are just dying to get their hands on technology that can give themselves an advantage over us as a nation. And so I do see the concern there, and I respect the decision to tentatively hold back. I would like to see some progress in that in the future, but you're not going to hear any heat from me when it comes to that.
Well,
So
we
I
talked
respect
about, I mean, this was a big theme in Denver, right? We talked about the implications of, being the Bitcoin network being so dependent on just, one, two, or three, manufacturers,
yeah,
right? For ASICs and things like that. It just doesn't, and up to this point, the ASIC has been the only way we can really maximize that network, right? And so we got to figure out ways to decentralize. We got to figure out ways to bring, more manufacturing, even if it's not in the U.S., right? If it's just other countries, we've got to be able to figure out a way to decentralize that, and make supply chain chips, all of it, right, readily available. That way, if somebody's being a bad actor or trying to push on the leverage side, in a negative way, we've got other options, and we really don't right now. So that is what I think is so interesting from a geopolitical standpoint. Really good. And just a quick, maybe plug for Denver, right? I think they just uploaded a link where you can go watch all those. It's like $8 in sats. I immediately did it. I'm going to go back and rewatch all of them again because I wasn't taking notes and paying attention all the time, right? So I'm going to go back and do that. But those guys are, especially on the chips panel, they were absolutely right. And, Bob Burnett's got a lot of insight. What's his name from Ahmed from Block, right? They all have such good insight on this, and they're all pushing for this, and really for the survival of not just us and Bitcoin, but the entire network, right? It's crucial.
I'll tell you what, I will be elated to find out that Bitmain is no longer the head honcho and we're not depending on Bitmain for chips anymore. The S19s, the S21s, the S9s, like these are great rigs, great machines. But the people who designed those machines, they're not great people. They don't care about us. They don't care about the Bitcoin network. They only care about making money. And, we do need to decentralize. We got to stop relying on TSMC. What happens if that foundry goes down? I mean, all of our NVIDIA chips, all of our other chips are being made in this one facility in Thailand, and it's not a good opportunity. So we need to decentralize, like you said, and it'll be exciting what the next couple of years is going to bring. I didn't know that they shared those videos out on the space website.
Just like today, I think I saw it on X. So
I'm definitely gonna go pay the 8,000 sats to make that happen for sure, because that was, oh my gosh, the amount of signal coming from that event was crazy. And I was going around doing interviews and taking B-roll and stuff, so I didn't get to go see the interview or the actual panels. And I know that information is invaluable to anybody who's trying to learn about Bitcoin heat reuse. So super excited about that. Thank you for letting me know. Last thing before we let you go, David, and I ask everybody this question, so you probably know I'm going to ask you this, but what does Bitcoin mean to you?
So to me personally, I mean, it means a lot of things, right? But kind of two in particular. One, it was a catalyst, right? It was a way to shake me out of, my old perspective and start looking for new ways to live my life, right? It was that changing. And then the other side is it truly is freedom from so many things. When you start to look at how much you pay in taxes and how much you lose every year from debasement, from inflation into the system, the money supply, and all of that kind of stuff, and then you see what's happened in the U.S. over the last few years. Really, it's been going slowly for a long time, right? But when you're that close to the money printer and you can act, with impunity, you're not worried about any kind of, consequences. It's just super destructive, right? From so many different directions. And so understanding, people asked me a couple years in, well, tell me what you know about Bitcoin. I was like, honestly, I don't know a whole lot about Bitcoin. I don't know how transactions work. I don't know how block space works. At the time I wasn't even running a node. I was like, I got no clue, man. He's like, well, why are you, you're all in though. It's like, yeah, I'm all in. Like, why? Is it because I know about the US dollar, right? I know about how terrible it is. If there's a 100% chance if I hold cash this year, next year, I can buy less things. There's 100% chance. It happens every year. It's never gone the other way. And so if there's even a 1% chance that Bitcoin can fix that, right, then just play the odds, right? That's kind of what it was. I just knew how terrible the US dollar was and what it was stealing from me. It was stealing my time, stealing my energy, stealing my joy, and stealing, any option I had to be happy and to hold on to the value that I created, in previous jobs and things like that. So it really, truly, it's a lot of things. You want to call it money, you want to call it, whatever, technology, whatever you want to call it, power. I don't know. Right. But to me, it's just freedom. It gives me, it teaches you to make the sacrifices for the more important things. But that is the freedom, right? You get to choose what's most important to you.
Yeah.
And then you get to, but it's also that with that freedom again, right? It comes with all that responsibility, right? If I want to be my own bank and I lose my keys, right, that's on me, right? But I have the freedom to hold and be my own bank, which is something that most people have never, ever got the opportunity in the world to do ever. So that's a very unique situation. That's what's so important to me from a technological perspective. And the fact that it just works and it's decentralized and knowing that everyone else on the planet has the same freedom. You're free to participate in Bitcoin. You're free to not, right? But you don't get to manipulate it. You play by the rules and you have fun in the sandbox, or you got to go somewhere else. That's to me, that's freedom. So
yeah, this idea, I love the way that you put that, David. This idea of freedom, everybody thinks that freedom from responsibility is like that's not the case. I got done reading The Bushido of Bitcoin by Alex Svetsky a couple weeks ago. It's a phenomenal book, but one of the main points in this book is that with freedom comes an equal amount of responsibility. You are not just free to do whatever you please. Like, you are in a sense, but you also have to deal with the responsibility that brings. And it's my understanding that if we want to be a free people, a free nation, a free world, then we need to bring back responsibility and stop obfuscating it to other people for convenience, and this is what Bitcoin does. At the end of the day, Bitcoin opens your eyes to the way the world is working currently and the way that it could work if we all just take a little bit more responsibility for ourselves, for our families, for our own lives and our circles around us, and just start teaching people how to also take responsibility as well. So I love the way that you put that, David. It was absolutely beautiful. Yeah, man, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to come on the show and provide this valuable information to my audience and to me. Tell the audience where they can find you if they want to get a hold of you and talk more about some of these projects that you got going on.
Sure. So I have an email up and running. The website is not up. So if you need to reach me, you can just email me. It's david@hydropod, hydropod.io. And then you can also, one of the best ways, honestly, to connect with me is on Twitter. It's just David Branscum, first name, last name, capital D, capital B. My handle attached to that is Rebel in Texas. The B is a Bitcoin logo. But just @David Branscum is what you type in to find me. I'm on X a lot. It's where I get most of my news and information and contact with. We have conversations with Bitcoiners have a lot of conversations about what they're doing there and stuff like that. So that's probably the easiest way to follow me or get in touch with me. But yeah, if you have an interesting project you're working on, great. But even if it's just like you just want to learn about it, right? There's been a couple guys that just connected with me that I've reached out, and they're like, hey, I'm interested in understanding how you would mine off a generator, right, in a gas field. And I'm like, yeah, let's chat for an hour, and I just give you all the knowledge I have, right? It's like we're all just trying to find this out. And the reason I know these things is because people were nice enough to teach me, right? So regardless of, it doesn't have to be a business thing. If you just want to reach out and have a conversation about heat recapture, biodigestion, off-grid gas, on-grid gas, I don't care. Whatever anyone needs, just, I'm happy to chat.
That's what I love about you, David, is, and it's very similar to a lot of other people in space. You are so high above me doing really cool things that I can't even imagine being a part of, but you're also human and you're very approachable. You're very respectful. And I appreciate that about you, David. Like, again, taking time out of your day to spend an hour with me on the podcast and talk to my audience, I'm grateful. So
thanks,
thank you for all you do, man. The last thing, leave our audience with a piece of advice.
Well, first thing I want to kind of tie into what you just said as my piece of advice, right? Nobody's above anybody else. We're all walking on a flat surface trying to go uphill. We're just at different steps on that hill, right? So that's first and foremost. So I think as you do get to do incredible things in this space and you get to do more fun things, just kind of remember that, right? There was always somebody else there before you struggling that made it easier for you for that step, right? So that's important to know. And then two, just do something, man. It's like, don't let anything stand in the way of you learning and doing. You don't have to, knowledge is really free. I mean, information is everywhere. You just got to go find it. If you want to, work on a project with someone, just, figure out a way to make it work for you financially. Take a couple days off and just go work and learn and whatever. Just do whatever you need. If you're passionate about Bitcoin, if you're passionate about Bitcoin mining, do whatever you need to do to get into the space, because it's going to grow fast. And the earlier you can get in, the more advantage you're going to have as this thing grows. So if you're interested in any way, shape, or form, and you're outside of it, get in. I had a talk with my eye doctor. I had an eye appointment today. Turns out he's a little bit of a Bitcoiner, but he didn't know about cold storage. So by the time I left, he's ordering a cold card from CoinKite, and next time I see him, right, he's like, oh, I didn't even, we talk about exchanges. He's like, I didn't even know. I was like, I know, but he's on that path too, right? It's just whatever you want to learn, just go learn it. It's all out there. Just go do it and find it.
Excellent advice, man. Be a sponge, take the first step, get off zero. I love it. David, again, thank you so much, man, for coming on the podcast today. It was amazing.
Thank you, man. I'll do it anytime. Happy to see you.
We'll have you back for sure. Well, guys, this has been the Build a Mind podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did enjoy it, you know what to do. We will see you guys on the next episode of the Build a Mind podcast. See you later.
See you.